everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are really excited to be here today. We have a really great panel and even greater guests. So I'd like to introduce Wong, executive producer for We Baby Bears, and Kris Mukai, writer for We Baby Bears. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. This is really cool.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'd like to start the conversation just getting to know you a bit better. I'd like to know what drove you to animation in the first place.
Just for me, just watching a lot of cartoons and just always loving anything that's related to the cartoon world. I think my entry point was indie comics. Mm-hmm. So just kind of just storytelling, and it turns out, in animation, you have the most flexibility in storytelling. It's just drawings. You're just moving them. So I think that was kind of what drew me to it, and just watching a lot of cartoons at a young age.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people in our audience can relate to that, right? Like it's a passion that drives you too. What about you, Kris? What brought you to animation?
I think it's really funny because I like Calvin and I, we didn't start working until, kind of recently, like last year or so, but we know each other from like doing indie comics and the comic scene. So I definitely, I grew up just like reading a ton of comics and drawing a ton of comics, and those skills like definitely translate really well into animation. So was sort of a natural progression. Like I just love storytelling, and this is like a very great venue to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because animation, you can control every aspect of it. In live action, you got actors, you got to deal with the food, stuff like that. In animation, you can change a lot. You can shuffle frames around and make stuff feel different. So
you can have characters like go to space and stuff, and it doesn't like break your. I mean, it might break your budget a little bit.
Absolutely, and it's like the purest form of your vision, right? Like
exactly,
you get it on the paper. And
actually, Steven Spielberg said that it was like all directors should be animators first, and I totally agree with that. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And actually, now that you're talking about your background as comic book writers and illustrators, I'd like to ask about that. So, Calvin, you had this background of illustration and comic creation. And how does that translate now to as an executive producer? What experiences from that past you can bring to your work now?
I think the quick answer is like because of my DIY experience doing indie comics, you're doing everything. You're writing, you're drawing, you're directing it in a way, you're editing it. So I think like honestly, it really set me up really well because when you're doing indie comics by yourself, you're driven to do it. You're driven to make zines for festivals. You're driven, and you give yourself deadlines. So it's almost like the perfect storm of all these qualities that makes it really effective as a showrunner, exec producer, because you kind of know a little bit about all the disciplines.
And you also know how to like see a project through from the beginning to the end. And you're like, I need to make this a finished, like a finished book at the end of it that's going to be shared with somebody else. So you're thinking like, okay, I need to do this so that, the person reading it understands, and it, the size and how many to print and things like that. And I feel like it really exercises all the muscles that are like, the overall aspect of the project.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sorry, Kris, I'd like to know, you've worked in other Cartoon Network shows like Adventure Time and even the original We Bare Bears. So how is that process similar or different now that you're working on We Baby Bears? Has it changed at all?
I think like so I was on the original We Bare Bears and the movie, and then the spinoff, and each one sort of like, you adjust your process to, what best suits the project. So it, we had a lot of the same team members, but then we also had a lot of new team members. So things are constant. I feel like things are constantly like changing and you're adapting. And then also the pandemic happened. So that was a complete overhaul of how we did things, compared to the first year that I was on Bears. So I think it's just, you have to have like a lot of flexibility because it's going to change like every season. I'm like, okay, let's go. It's going to be different this year. And by the end of the season, you're like, we have it all down. It's so smooth. Like, it's great. And then like the next season comes and you get another curveball thrown at you and you're like, okay, we'll do it. We'll change. I mean, the biggest change is that, a lot of us are working from home still. So that's.
But there's so many tools. There's so many tools out there, so we can all collaborate online, and in some ways it's faster. Like, right? Yes. Like tools like Frame.io and like Google Docs and stuff like that.
Yeah, Frame.io is like amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has changed a lot in this industry. So and it was a great moment to have those tools now that we need them, right? In the process.
Yeah, the timing.
Sounds to me. Yeah, the timing was perfect. It's almost like they planned it. Anyway, but so basically, from what I'm getting is that every step of your way has given you new tools to improvise and to overcome new challenges. I'd like to know if your magical box, now we're getting a little bit into We Baby Bears, if your magical box could teleport you to the past, to the very start of your careers, what advice would you give to yourselves?
For me, I was just like, get better at drawing stuff in perspective. Like I still have issues with it. Like I'm just sitting there going, okay, vanishing points, like trying to grid and stuff. But I was lucky because the first show I worked on, regular show, is a very flat show. It's characters just sitcom-y, so characters just talking heads. Yes. But as a result, it trained me really well because I started like, I want to do action scenes. I'm bored of doing talking heads. And then I think I got better at that stuff. But I wish I did have a more of a leg up when I started drawing stuff in perspective really well. And maybe cars, learning how to draw cars better.
Oh, yeah, cars.
What about you, Kris?
Yeah.
Me, I'm not, I think I would just tell myself to learn how to use Final Draft sooner. Honestly, it's like, I really liked the program. And it's
a good program.
It's really good. It's like really streamlined, and it only has the tools that you need to use. And it's like, oh, I could have used this for my comic work like so much sooner, and it would have made things go a little bit quicker.
That is great. So knowing your weaknesses and knowing your tools, right? To anticipate to that. Well, thanks so much, guys. Now I'm going to get into the actual show, So we have Kris, we have Panda, and we have Iceberg, which are very loved and known characters. But in this show, we see them in new places, having magical adventures in a very different context. How were you able to find the essence of these characters so that they still feel like the bears we know?
Go toss it over to Kris, because I did come on a little later in the production, but I know Manny did a lot of work in trying to figure that out. I know that when I started, it was like I was like, okay, Kris is the brave dumb one, and like Panda's the soft sensitive one, Iceberg's the stoic cool one. It didn't take me very long to get up to speed, because I think they are blank slates to an extent, I think they are. And I think that's one of the strengths of the show. But Kris, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the characters, their personalities were such a foundation for Baby Bears, because we are pitching something new, but we're not starting from zero, because we have these great characters that we love writing for, and they have such a great dynamic, and you can kind of toss them into any situation and just see how they react to it. So their personalities were they were such a lifeline when we were developing stuff.
Yeah, in a way, because the strokes are broad, it was easier to bring them into the new format of the show, which is a new world every episode.
And we were kind of just thinking we were thinking what have we not been able to see them do in the original iteration of the show, and then this the spin-off version is like us just like going crazy.
Yeah.
Like we're like we have too much freedom now.
Too much freedom.
But I also like how their personalities have evolved over the course of like the Baby Bears season. Like Panda's like so much more sassier now, and like I love that for him. Like he feels like more confident now, and I'm like, I love that.
Yeah.
Which one would you say that it's the most challenging to write for?
For me, it's probably Grizz because he's happy. He's a happy-go-lucky guy, and it's definitely much easier to write characters with darkness. So like that's why Panda and Ice Bear are a little bit easier for me.
Yeah, we're all like low-key depressed. And, like,
yeah. I don't know about Kris, but
Panda's definitely the easiest. I feel like
like
he's like that tortured artist, and
he's
like,
a tortured artist.
I feel like we all like identify with that. I think Ice Bear is the toughest because he's like very reserved and he's not very selfish, and usually it's like that selfishness of the character that comes out that makes for like a conflict in the story.
Right.
And sometimes it's a little hard to find like a story for Ice Bear. But when it happens, it's always
that's a good answer.
Which one would be your favorite to write for? Is it the same or does it change a lot?
I think Panda's the most fun because of the tortured artist angle. And
yeah, his melodramatics.
And his fan art, and just like
absolutely.
And he's soft and sensitive, just like us. Everybody on the writers.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking in regards to the dynamics of the characters. Is there a golden rule to writing their interactions? Because, juggling these very distinct personalities must be a challenge. Is there any particular set of rules that you have on a blackboard, or is it just winging it as you go?
I think just at the end of the day, they're brothers that love each other, and they have to resolve it by the end of it, and that they're babies. I think those are two rules. Like, I don't know, Kris, do you have any specific rules?
Usually, I would say maybe like the only like rule is that usually we have Grizz kind of taking the lead in.
Yeah.
So like if they're having a conversation, Grizz is usually going to be the one that initiates it because he's the one that's he loves to be out there.
Oh yeah, and actually now I remember Mikey was saying that the lines are usually triplets. Like Grizz says something, then Panda says something. Ice Bear's always last. Like I remember one time I moved Ice Bear line up, and he's like, no, we don't do that here. And I was like, oh, yeah.
And then the other like unspoken rule is that the brothers never say, no one ever says Ice Bear's name except Ice Bear. They just call him like little bro and stuff. And that's always like a rule that's like, I never know how to explain that. It just sounds wrong if someone says his name.
I've never noticed it, but you're absolutely right. There's no episode in which they mention him by Ice Bear, right? But I think that's very interesting what you're talking about right now, like understanding your characters and just putting them in different situations and letting them interact with each other, right? And letting them find themselves. This is really interesting. Now, that's in regards to story. In regards to the style, you have this like kawaii influence, and I'd like to know what makes it such a great style for this story in contrast to the original one or the first one.
Oh yeah, I love this question. I think the original show was fantastical. I mean, pushed characters in like kind of a real setting, but then this one's just kind of those characters, but in fantastical settings. And I think the anime stuff, the kawaii type style, is great for showing emotions. I mean, and especially the emotions of a little kid. Like we do some stuff on the show that we never did on the original show, which is kind of like, when a character's having a tantrum or something, and the frame rate almost like breaks. It's just you're almost popping between two poses, and that's an anime trope. And I love that. It's almost like this emotion's so big that it's breaking animation. And I think I don't know, I love it because before the show I worked on shows that were pretty realistic, and I couldn't do stuff like that. So I think it's a really beautiful part of the show, and it's very freeing as an artist. to be able to use those type of anime tropes.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
what challenges does that bring? Because it's a very different style, it's very unique, and these are somewhat previously established characters that now you have to transform. Were there any parts, or are there parts where you struggle to find their identity visually on this new show?
I think there was some, like season 1, it was just tough to like, we would, because everyone, you know, if a character is like angry, they would have like a certain expression, and but then the next artist would draw that same kind of anger, but like in a different way. And I think it was like a little bit of a challenge to like make the design, like the number of designs, like kind of cohesive and sort of like make sense across all of the episodes. It was like that conundrum where you're like, I have too many of a good thing, like they're all really funny, and then like having to pick and choose and be like, we have to stick to just one so that we're not breaking the design team over and over again.
Now that you mention it, there were a couple things, like when a character's sad, I think some early episodes had like those weird scrambled eggs eyes that are all wavy on the end, until somebody pointed out, hey, that actually, whenever it comes back, it looks terrible. So we kind of simplified that. So but it is like a dialogue with the audience, you know. It is like, you know, repetition of some of those expressions, because it's like shorthand for emotions and stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Having some limitations, right, at some point, because complete freedom sometimes drives us crazier than a lot of limitations. But I feel like it's working out. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying. These are very expressive characters, and they visit very magical and interesting places. And that leads me to my next question, because we see these three bears going through all kinds of stories and genres, characters, you know. If you had to, let's imagine for a second that you had to stick to just one genre for the rest of the series, which one would you choose?
I really love science fiction, anything science fiction, and then anything with lore. I mean, it is kind of silly to talk about lore on, like, this is a comedy show, you know, it's 11 minutes, pretty self-contained, but like, I mean, I just love learning stuff about the characters, like backstories, where does the box come from, you know, stuff like that.
What about you, Kris?
Like, there's like so many to choose from. Oh man, I don't know. I just rewatched like the No Land All Air episode, which is where they're like in a world that doesn't have any land, and that
and that was
so funny to me. I don't know why you guys let me do this.
That must have been a challenge. I wasn't in the writer's room for that one, but yeah, I mean, did you have a discussion in the writer's room? It was like, what are the rules of this world? This seems insane.
No, it was
just kind of
it's all air. No, it's no land. It's all air.
I guess it's in the title, the rules in the title.
Yeah. I want to see them come back. I want to see them come back and interact with those characters.
I love this freedom that you have in the show, and the fact that you enjoy it so much. I think that also conveys into the content, and the audience can feel that, and that's why it has had such a good reception, right? Something that you just mentioned, Calvin, that I found really interesting is talking about the backstory of the characters. So I'd like to know, are there bits of it that you decided not to mention, maybe that the production team knows, but they're never going to share?
I mean, it's probably why baby Ice Bear talks now. That's a big point of controversy, but we'll never explain that, right, Kris?
He grew.
Exactly.
He talks as an adult.
There you go.
This is just he's just a little older than in the original Baby Bears flashbacks.
You heard it here first, people. The question that was never to be answered was just answered in this panel. So
exactly.
Why didn't we answer this?
Don't worry about it.
Maybe we'll never 100% know why Box can, you know, like how the box works, you know. Maybe
absolutely. Absolutely. Kris, do you know why? Would you mind telling us the answer for this?
Yeah.
We just keep it on a roll. So we've talked about the worlds. What about the characters? How do you create these new characters that they find? First of all, how do they come up with the character itself, and then the interaction with the bears? How does that work in the writer's room?
I think a lot of the stuff that we come up with honestly comes from some like news stories or articles we're interested in. I know Manny was telling me like the character in Baby Bear Genius. What's that kid's name? Kris, the kid with the glasses who's a jerk. But anyway, that character came from like an article he read about, schools like and their restrictive policies letting people in or something like that. So I think, yeah, I mean, just real life issues and news are kind of a good way to generate characters. And then, I mean, also kind of looking at old anime and stuff and going like, I want to do my version of that guy or that Ghibli character. I think that's something that's been fun too in generating new ideas. Yeah.
I feel like we usually approach it as like just who would be interesting for the bears to interact with? Like what's a good like contrast between the bears and another character? Because we can't like we have like a teddy bear character, but he can't act like his personality isn't like anything like the three brothers. Like so what would that look like? And just like trying to like mix it up and make it, just mix it up.
Yeah. What comes first, like the scenario, the world, the situation, or the other character that you're gonna bounce against?
I think the world first. I mean, we've been in the latest season, which we can't talk about too much, unfortunately, but I think we come up with a world and then we come up with characters. And then
especially in season 1, because they had to go to a new world like every episode, so we were just like hardcore trying to brainstorm like, okay, what's this one's deal, and what's this one's deal.
Thinking about the freedom that you've got with the places that you can visit and the characters, is there a point where do you think, okay, this was too much, we have to scale it back?
I think there was a couple of examples that pop into mind where we came up with an idea and it was too big for the episode, and the execs kind of told us to save it for later. And I think that is a challenge, is like coming up with ideas. The stakes are big, but not too big, because you want to save that stuff for later in the season stuff. So I think that's kind of the strategies we have sometimes building stories. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about? Exactly. Could you tell us a little bit about what's coming? Like, what's the future holding for the baby bear? Something more epic, or anything you can tease?
Go ahead, Kris.
Well, I was just gonna say, we're like, the thing I'm excited about is like seeing characters from season 1 coming back. So we got to bring a bunch of characters back, and it's really fun to like be able to include them in more stories. So that's what I'm most excited about.
I think that was a challenge early on the show. Is just like, if they're going to a new world every single episode, like, are there going to be characters that ground them across these worlds? And then we did start doing that with like Malin and Madeline, or Unica, who's also Dimension Hopper. So I think that is kind of I think, and that's a testament to just being more flex about stuff, right? I think if it was too rigid and it's like, no, new world, new characters, new every single time, I think that would probably start to feel a little stale. But I think on a show, you want to see your main characters build relationships with characters.
Yes.
And we're going to see a lot more of that in season 2.
It's going to be very exciting. We'll be waiting for it, and we'll be on the lookout for these returning characters. Unfortunately, as of now, our time is running out. So I'd just like to ask you if there's anything you'd like to say to the fans that are watching right now, both from inside the industry and maybe just fans of the series, some message that you'd like to share with them?
Just keep watching. We think it's probably the most fun show I've ever worked on, because it's in some extent it's a blank slate. You can go to any world and just look for more really fun adventures coming up. The Bears.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I would say, thanks so much for watching our show and supporting us. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. I think that we can open the panel now for questions. I think we might have a few of them. Kris, on the panel. Let's give us a second here. Oh, we can't hear you, Kris. Are there any questions already? If you could, we'd like to hear your questions about the creativity of the show, the work process behind it, the workflow. We know that some of you are part of the studios or starting up studios, so maybe there's some questions that this might help you with your own projects. We'd love to hear that too. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All the anticipation.
Yeah.
They're building suspense.
Like holding my breath.
In the meantime, guys, could you tell something for newcomers, for people who are starting in animation? Any recommendations that you might have based on your experience?
I think Storyboard Pro is really important piece of software to learn. I guess they're on a subscription now. You could get a demo of it, but I think I came from a world where we're storyboarding on Post-its and paper, but Storyboard Pro really opened it up a lot for me, and I learned so much. And you can time stuff out and export movies. It's a really powerful program. It has its quirks, though. So
it's like constantly evolving too. I feel
like
like I was doing boards on paper and then switched to Storyboard Pro, and now it's been like forever since I used Storyboard Pro. And like when I look at the stuff that our board artists can do now, I'm like, what?
Yes.
How do you do that? I feel like I'd have to relearn it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important software for people to learn. I mean, even if you're any part of animation, I think you'll get a leg up if you know that software.
Yeah. And Kris, you mentioned before Final Draft. How do you go from that part of the process, Final Draft, which is more like a traditional screenplay, to a storyboard? How's that transition in the workflow?
I mean, I give the script to the board artist, and then I think there's a way that they can like import the text and add it to the dialogue boxes in there. So there is some like program to program communication there. Yeah. But I was just thinking about your like teleporting back in the past and giving myself advice. And I was like, oh, actually, like the real advice that I would give myself is like, if you're interested in going into writing, you like try to whether it's like with a group of friends or, people that you're comfortable with, but like try to like pitch your own stuff and read your own scripts like out loud, just to get really comfortable doing that. Because the first, I just was sitting in the writer's room like as a revisionist at first, and just I was so shocked because like the writers were just like talking and like throwing ideas around really, really, really fast. And just like, I come from a cartooning world where I just like internalize stuff and then spit it out on paper. And I was like, oh no, like I have to talk. Like you have to be okay with like explaining things without drawing them. Like it's so funny that it's like a different skill. But you can definitely exercise it, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that is good advice for artists that like I think the DIY is kind of a trap sometimes, like because you think you can do everything. But I think another piece of advice I'd probably give my younger self is like, hey, work with people and collaborate and work on your communication skills, because I think a lot of us, when weird artists, when we get more management positions in animation, we don't know how to deal with people, and I am no exception. So like I think, but over time I've learned on the job. But
yeah,
like that'll get you a leg up for sure.
it's definitely something you can exercise. Like okay, today I'm exercising like my skill to work with other people and work with a team.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just weird to think about that because like as a cartoonist, you're like, but I have this, but I have it all, I can do it all myself.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I've seen many people struggle, many showrunners too, struggle to let go of, is like, I can't do it all myself. Like I have to, it's a collaborative thing, and it might change a little bit from your vision, but part of it is flexibility to being.
Actually, I think that we have a question here that might relate.
Okay, great. Okay, cool.
Yanela Llosa, sorry if I mispronounce your last name, asks about how the idea was born. I'm paraphrasing, but if you were part of the process of the original pitch, how did you came to that? And if you weren't, then how was it born, in the writer's room or during brainstorming of the first episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we were asked to pitch a spinoff with the baby bears specifically, and we were kind of coming at it from this direction of like, well, what is it? Well, how can we make it different from the original? Like how can we make it feel like its own thing? What can we do that we couldn't necessarily have the adult bears do in their storyline? So that was the direction that we were coming at it from. And being able to go more cartoony, to be more adventurous and like more magical, those were all things that like the original bears is super grounded and we could do fantastical things on it, but it always sort of took like this logic puzzle to like get them to a place where they could do something fantastical and over the top. And so we were like, okay, we just want to do a thing where they can go on these crazy adventures and it like fits into the world. So that was what we were building on top of.
And if anything, you've proven how much there was to explore, right, with this character at the end, because it's all over the place, and we love that. I have another question from Maria. She asks, how do you make sure that the episode is fun?
It's fun. Oh wow. When you look at a script, when I look at a script, I'm thinking you really have to play it in your mind and just think of how to punch that up visually, like, because at the end of the day, sometimes scripts, the trap is talking heads. They're just talking and delivering dialogue. But I think in a show, especially like this, which is action adventure, you have just such an open canvas to make it fun. What if, actually, come to think of it, I remember the old Adventure Time test was like Finn and Jake. They were having a talk about relationships or something. but the challenge was to make that interesting. So I remember like some stuff in the test was just like just have them running along and jumping over stuff and saying this stuff, and it is stuff like that. You really, as a director, you really have to think about staging and like how to make a dialogue scene interesting, especially exposition. It's really hard with exposition. But that's such a good question. Like, and Kris, like from a script standpoint, I know you put stuff like that in there sometimes, but
I think we're always trying to think
they have a
like,
hook. They have to have a hook.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're always trying to think, how can we make this more physical? Because it is a
Yeah.
visual thing. So we're always trying to think, so what, how would this look visually? Like, what are they, what actions are they doing on screen? Because we can't have them just like standing and stuff. And
Yeah.
then, just trying to think like, what's the most interesting thing that's funny or that makes us laugh that we can put in there.
Yeah, I remember in a recent episode, there's just a part where it's like dialogue about what they have to do next. But I think, I can't remember why, but they're all pinching each other while they're saying it.
Yeah.
It made the scene way funnier because they're going like, yeah, we're going to do it. Ow! It's just peppering it with them absurdly pinching each other the whole time while doing it. So it is coming up with stuff like that in the writer's room.
And I think
I'm sorry, Kris.
I think like the leaning into the anime style of it also really helps because they can be saying like, okay, we have to put like the square in the square hole, and then like they have this like thought bubble where you can see them doing it, and it's like you don't have to have them like go and like pull it out from somewhere and then like put it away. It's just, it can kind of appear and then disappear. And I feel like that adds to like a lot of scenes.
One thing that's really fun about being more cartoony is the idea of hammer space. They can reach behind their back and pull out a big cartoon hammer. That's been so fun. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, they could just, I think like in other shows I've been on, I was like, no, we got to track that hammer. We can, and stuff like that.
I don't think it would fit behind him.
Yeah.
And I have a question in that regard. How much of that comedy comes from the very start of the idea, maybe script, and how much do you find along the way during production?
Oh, wow. I think ideas come in at every stage of the way.
Yeah.
I think, you only can go so far with just seeing the script and just playing it in your head. But then when you see the storyboard pitch, that generates more ideas, and then when we bring into animatics, sometimes adding funny music or sound effects will sell a joke. So,
I think that's the most fun about working with a big team is that like, we'll write the script and then we'll pass it off. And then everyone that comes afterward adds like another layer of like humor and like excitement, and just like the ideas just like get layered on top of it. And it's so exciting to see at the end.
Yeah.
We have two more questions. One of them is from Azul. She'd like to know how does the showrunner job look like on We Were Birds? What does it entice?
There's a lot of meetings, and then people trying to wrangle me into those meetings, and so I don't forget them. It's a lot. You're dealing with every person on the show and giving them direction, and but as you can imagine, showrunner schedule is pretty packed. Usually, we do records at a certain time of the week, and we do mixes at a certain time of the week, storyboard pitches. So schedule is very regimented, but as I was touching on before, it really is about communication with all these different groups, and like just making it smooth and as pleasant for everybody, especially when catastrophes happen. Sometimes we're just like, oh, we got to rewrite all this, and like just doing that gracefully without slowing anything down too much. But it's a very fun job. It's a lot of your day. Like every day is like all these meetings, but it's really satisfying when you get to that final mix stage and you're just like, this is it. This is the thing we've all created. Yeah. And we celebrate that on the show too. We screen the new shows to everybody, and so everybody can just appreciate all the work everybo's put into it.
I love those screenings because it's always like, and thank you to Val, and thank you to, thank you to Christina and Brand. It's just like, we're just like we're just like pointing out and like, thank you for doing the background, and thank you for doing the color. Like,
yes.
Yeah, and I love those screenings because they're like almost like Easter eggs, because sometimes I'll just say, hey, Kris, what can you talk about on this episode? And then, it's like director's commentary, like live.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think that this also reflects on what we were talking about, the collaborative nature of our industry and how to create something from nothing. Jordi has a follow-up question to that is, how does a showrunner communicate to the director of the episode? And what does the director actually do in We Baby Bears?
I think how technical can we get? We get pretty technical, right? So I usually do like a cut pass on the script to hand over to the directors. The directors on our show mostly handle storyboards and animatics and a little bit of post stuff. But yeah, I just kind of give them the broad strokes of what I was thinking about scenes. If I have like ideas for scenes, I just thumbnail it out real quickly and give it to them, so they have a direction to go in, and then they kind of pass that stuff down along, and they kind of add their own jokes and stuff in there. I think, to some extent, it is kind of on our shows a little bit technical. It is really about putting in hookup poses for the storyboards, and calling out technical stuff on the board. But it's also very creative because we work directly with the writers and us. The directors are in the writers' room. They're in like every stage of it, so they're just kept in the loop for everything. And we have two really amazing directors on the show.
I feel like George and Caroline always like pitch jokes, and we're always like, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
They especially pitch like visual jokes, and it's like,
they
oh,
do,
thank God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think because of all my meetings and stuff, and you can go like, I don't know, then that's when you hand it over to the directors, and then they come up with something really funny. So I think, it really is just a continuation of like just the creativity and building off of ideas and stuff. The directors do a lot on their show.
Well, thank you very much. I think that it's our time for wrapping up. Okay. But I want to thank you for being here, for giving us some of your experience, for creating this amazing show. I want to thank Pixelatl for giving us this space too, for letting us get close to each other, to the whole community who is watching right now and has been following us through. We hope that you've enjoyed it and that this will help you. And I think that I'd like to add one more question to this, just to say goodbye. If you had to give a home to only one of the baby bears, which one would you choose to live with?
They cannot be separated. Impossible. I would lose my mind if I could only adopt one. It's so funny. It's so funny because sometimes we get merchandise, especially on the old bears. We would sometimes do like, they would send Daniel a ton of plushies and stuff, and then we would, like, people on the crew would get them, but you always had to take like 3 at a time. It always had to be Kris, Panda, and Ice Bear. So like but one time we all got like this one plushie, and there's a photo where we're all just like holding the 3 of them. And we're like, this is a lot, but it's like, it's wrong if they're apart.
You can't separate them. Yeah, you'd have to adopt all 3.
That was a tricky question. That was the right answer to the trick question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks everyone at home watching too, and we'll stay in touch. And please please keep following us to see these new characters and new stories that are coming up to We Baby Bears in these new seasons. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Hey.